Social Democrats and some nationalistic parties, and they are actually the ruling party of Riga, which is the capital of Latvia right now. So our group of experts was invited to their party meeting to suggest that their party should endorse the program that we've been supporting for many years, I think even before the party was formed. And we're willing, of course, to talk to all the political parties, and we'd like as many parties as possible to endorse our economic platform.
Well, it doesn't sound to me like Latvia is considering trying to join the Eurozone.
The neoliberal government has pledged to, but now the question is, well, here's the problem. Latvia and other post-communist countries looked at Europe as protecting them from Russia. Remember, they were all in the Soviet Union prior to 1991, and they felt themselves exploited. In the 1950s, Stalin came into most of these countries and either deported or arrested most of the middle class, which is the professional class. So they were left without a professional class, except for the Russian administrators that came in. There's a lot of anti-Russian feeling in these countries, and they thought that, well, if we go with Europe, Europe is going to help us get higher living standards, and we want democracy, we don't want Stalinism. Well, what they got, of course, is a travesty of democracy and a travesty of higher living standards. Europe has treated the Baltics and other countries as basically as colonies, as export markets for their agricultural surpluses, for their manufactured goods, and especially as banking markets. So rather than helping the Baltics and post-Soviet economies set up their own banks, you had the European banks come in. The Swedish banks went into Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania. The Austrian banks went into the old Habsburg Empire, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. And so you have these post-Soviet economies essentially being reduced to the status of a third world colony of Europe, and now all of a sudden they're saying, wait a minute, this isn't what we wanted. We wanted our living standards to go up. Instead, they're going down. We didn't want to have to emigrate to Europe. We wanted to join Europe but be in our own country. And now if we want work, we have to leave the country, learn a foreign language, and go live in a European country. And the European economy is also shrinking. So you're having people leave for South America, for Asia, for North America, and the Baltics. You're having the kind of flight of people out of the Baltics that you had in the 18th century from England and Europe, people fleeing debt peonage and debt slavery in Europe would all come to America. America was populated by people who fled this kind of economic threat in the old world, and now you have it repeated. The old world people are again fleeing out of Europe in order to get jobs and fleeing against having to spend the rest of their lives paying the banks for their bank loans that have gone bad.
But what would you say for people in Europe who do have the euro? We keep hearing that the Greek debt meltdown is going global, or at least going European. Can you describe why the situation in Greece has a contagious effect, or is it emblematic of a much wider extent of a serious economic crisis?
Well, first of all, there's no debt meltdown. When people say debt meltdown, they're trying to whoop up people to believe that there's a crisis. Nothing is very different this year from what it was last year and the year before that, when there was no crisis at all. The crisis is an offensive by the vested interests, by the wealthy interests, to shift the taxes off themselves onto labor and to say, wait a minute, now is the time to really drive the nail into the coffin of the class war. Now we're going to mount an offensive to get rid of Social Security, to get rid of the welfare state. We're going to get rid of public health, get rid of Social Security, get rid of medical care, get rid of public spending, and run the government so that they tax labor and industry and agriculture basically to bail the banks out of the bad loans that are extracting so much interest that they're shrinking the economy. So the financial interests in Europe are willing to see the economy shrink, willing to see the economy deindustrialized, to force the governments to say, if you pay your pensions and Social Security, you have to sell off your public enterprises, you have to sell off any land or mineral resources or anything else in the public domain to the bankers. You have to sell your roads for us to buy to turn into toll roads. You have to sell everything you have, and we'll privatize it. And what this is a return to feudalism. It used to be that nations would have to militarily conquer a country in order to grab the land and impose taxes and tribute on them. And now this is done not militarily anymore. This is done financially. And the financial aggression has replaced the military aggression, but the effect is just as devastating. It's just as devastating for the population in terms of reducing the population, of driving the youth out of the country, of depriving the country of the people between 20 and 35 years old of working age. The effect is exactly like a military war, but it's done financially, and the solution is for these countries to realize that there is a new war that's taking place. People don't even realize that it's a financial war because somehow they believe that they can get richer by going into debt, as long as they're going into debt to buy property that they think will rise in value. And, of course, they were just tricked. The properties plunged in value, and now they have to make up the difference by spending the rest of their life paying off the negative equity that the banks should be stuck with. So the solution would be to do what governments were told to do a century ago, nationalize the banking system, just as you'd have a public broadcasting system and a phone system. The financial system should be in the public sector. I can guarantee you that if the public sector took over the credit card system, or even if they applied the anti-monopoly pricing laws and price regulation that you have applied in America to your gas and electric bills, you'd have interest rates rolled back to about 8 or 9%, nothing like the usurious rates. You'd have bad loans wiped off the books if they're predatory and if they're crooked. Essentially, financial crime has been decriminalized and treated as part of the free market. So it's as if they're identifying the free market with a free rein for criminals. None of this would have occurred a century ago. Countries would have been up in arms. And the question is how you create the same class consciousness today that you had a century ago.
Well, you have said and written that the idea in historical social reform was to have government enterprises operate natural monopolies so that there would be some kind of competition to keep private production in line.
That was the theory.
Right, and then the post office would be an example of this. But now what's happening to the post office?
The right-wingers have made sure that the post office is run as inefficiently as possible. If you put deregulators in charge of government, they're going to make sure that they make government a travesty of what it's supposed to be. Governments used to be looked at as efficient, but if you have a George Bush or an Obama running the government, of course it's going to be inefficient.
Well, right. You know, when I go into the post office, the guy behind the counter tells me that the post office is losing billions of dollars.
It's supposed to lose billions of dollars. You know, the first business school in America was the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. The first economics professor there was Simon Patton. And Patton wrote that the role of public enterprise was like a fourth factor of production alongside labor, land, and capital. But whereas labor earned wages and land produced land rent and capital earned profits, the objective of public enterprise wasn't to make an economic return, it was to lower the overall cost of doing business. And so the idea that America got rich on throughout the whole 20th century, what enabled it to outclass all the other nations in the world was that it said, okay, we're going to have progressive taxation, we're going to tax wealth and property, especially monopolies and real estate wealth, and we're going to use that money to subsidize public investment in roads, transport, and infrastructure. And by providing infrastructure, ever since the Erie Canal and the Cumberland Road, we're going to lower the cost of doing business so that American industry and agriculture can undersell that of every other country. And we can undersell every other country by raising American wage rates. Now, I recently republished a book that I wrote on this, America's Protectionist Takeoff. And you can buy the book from Amazon.com, along with my book on the economic theory of this, Trade, Development, and Foreign Debt. And this book traces the development really of basically by Republicans in the 19th century after the Civil War and before, showing how America can become an industrial powerhouse and how high-wage labor can undersell pauper labor because high-wage labor is more productive labor. The whole idea of reducing wage rates and squeezing labor is making labor actually less productive, not more productive, and that's why America has lost its position as industrial leader of the world, and it didn't have to be that way. It's lost it because it's followed this right-wing Chicago school monetarist travesty of free enterprise.
Michael Hudson, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Bonnie.
Something happening, yeah. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there.
I've been speaking with Dr. Michael Hudson. Today's show has been Europe's Financial Class War Against Labor, Industry, and Government. Michael Hudson is a financial economist and historian. He is president of the Institute for the Study of Long-Term Economic Trend, a Wall Street financial analyst, and distinguished research professor of economics at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. His 1972 book, Super Imperialism, The Economic Strategy of American Empire, is a critique of how the United States exploited foreign economies through the IMF and World Bank. He is also author of Trade, Development, and Foreign Debt and America's Protectionist Takeoff.